Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the SportzMoose Media Podcast for the week. Ricky Dean along with Rick Burkett as we prepare to do some high school football this week. We've got a lot of area high school games that we're going to talk to you about, and we're going to talk to you about some other stuff tonight too. Some really exciting news for Rick and myself as far as with the show goes, and everything. We'll kind of throw that out at you in just a little bit. But we want to get things started basically the way we have since we've started the program. And we want to talk first about area high school games, and we'll start in Monroe County, Alabama. The J.F. Shields Panthers. The J.F. Shields Panthers, who so far on this early high school football season, I mean, we're approaching the halfway point. We're approaching mid-season. But so far, the J.F. Shields Panthers are winless as they got beat first game of the year by J.U. Blacksher 47-20. They lost to Monroe County 54-22. They lost, they had an open date, and then they lost at McIntosh 41-6. So they're 0-3, but Rick, they go to Fruitdale this week, and you and I have talked about this a little bit prior to going on the podcast, going on the air, so to speak, and it looks like that J.F. Shields could have an opportunity to pick up their first game of the year this week against Fruitdale High School.
That's right. Fruitdale hadn't, they've just been, I mean, no other way to say it, they've just been taking it on the chin so far this year, haven't scored many points, and just a tough season for them. You know, Fruitdale, in times past, been state champions, and located up northwest Mobile County, right there where Highway 17 comes in. A lot of good people up that way, but I think J.F. Shields, if I had to make a prediction here, I think J.F. Shields might get their first W for the year. Well,
we saw J.F. Shields early in the year, and they struggled a little bit, but like you said, they've got some athletic ability on the field with their team. They're few in number, and a lot of times, when you only got a few kids on the roster, when you're playing, and just about, I mean, to be honest with you, J.F. Shields is probably one of the smallest 1A schools, public schools in the state of Alabama. So when they put a football team on the field, there's just not that many in number. But when they play somebody like a Fruitdale team that's very close to them in number, you got quite a few athletes at J.F. Shields. And so hopefully, as we look at things, J.F. Shields is going to be able to pull out a victory and get their first win of the year.
Yeah, let's hope so, for sure.
Well, as we continue, let's go to the AISA. Of course, if we move, well, actually, no, let's stay in the public school group of things. Let's talk about Monroe County, because we had Monroe County last week, and Monroe County, even though they lost last week, Coach Shannon Felder and his group, it's not a bad looking football team. They got beat by a very good WS Neal Blue Eagle football team, a game that you and I did on the radio and did on YouTube. Neal beat them by a score of 48-12. Now, here's the deal. It's going to be ugly, and I mean, you just got to say it, because we've seen both of these teams. Monroe County has to travel to Mobile and play Mobile Christian. And so that game is really probably going to get out of hand pretty early.
Yeah, I mean, from living here in Mobile, and you and I there for a while followed. We had some friends that were playing twice for Mobile Christian. I had some of my ex-players from the youth league going to play at Mobile Christian. And I tell you what, of the Mobile Christian teams I've seen, and I always pull for them because I like Coach Ronnie Cottrell, know him personally, and I hope they do well. But just when they came out on the field against WS Neal, you and I were like, man, wow. And I mean, they're an impressive looking bunch, and then they took care of business. Didn't, as they say, one of our favorite little sayings, beat the brakes. They did not beat the brakes off Neal. it was a fairly competitive game, but they were clearly the better team. And W.S. Neal, in fact, did beat the brakes off of Monroe County, even though Monroe County has shown the ability to score, and they did again against W.S. Neal because they've got some real speed on offense. And I think Coach Felder has got Monroe County headed in the right direction. But that's tough right there to drive down to Mobile Christian and play them at home with it. I mean, Mobile Christian's probably got right now on their roster, I would say they've got 5 or 6 players that will probably be playing, Division I football, in college before they're finished. So, it's going to be a tough one for Monroe County.
Yeah, they're a good-looking bunch. I mean, when they get off the bus, like we said last week, when they got off the bus, it was like we looked at them and just about had to take your hat off to them and just tip your hat to them because they kind of wow you from the point that they get off the bus. Continuing with games in our area, if we move into the AISA, like we do every week, the Monroe Academy Volunteers. Monroe Academy so far on the year is 3-2, which is a little unusual for a Monroe Academy team. Coach Mitchell Tuberville usually has the Volunteers playing a little better. I don't think it's a situation where Monroe Academy is really playing bad. I think the situation is high school football just goes through cycles, and you're only going to be, it's like, I don't care how good of a coach you are. It doesn't matter at what level of the game you're coaching at. You can have the X's and O's, but if you don't have the Jimmies and the Joes, then you're going to go through down times. And I think that is exactly what's happening with the Volunteers at Monroe Academy as they're 2-3 on the year. They've got Patrician Academy next. Now, Patrician Academy has in the past been a very good football team, but Patrician Academy is also struggling some on this early season. As we look at Patrician Academy's record, Patrician Academy themselves are coming to this ball game after an open date. They're only 2-2. So this could be a game that Monroe Academy, if they play well enough, it's a game that they could probably stay in and could possibly win.
That's right. Just based on their common opponents, I'd say this game's a toss-up. I think either team could win this. Of course, it's over in Butler at Patrician Academy over in West Alabama, but Monroe Academy could win this game.
So as we continue looking at other games in our area, of course, looking staying in the Alabama High School Athletic Association Class 3A Region 1. Now, we talked about Mobile Christian, and unfortunately, that was the opponent of our next school to discuss, and that, of course, is the XL Panthers. XL went over to Mobile Christian last week, and it was not good. The Mobile Christian team that we've spoken very fond of here, XL got beat by a score of 55-0. Now, this could be a little better game, but they're facing another good 3A Region 1 opponent as XL they will be at home this week, which is a good thing for them, and they've got the Flomaton Hurricanes coming into town. That game will be at XL, and Flomaton is a very good football team. We've seen them. They beat Hillcrest Evergreen earlier in the year, which is a pretty good football team. So Flomaton is good, and they're going to be on their way to XL to play the XL Panthers.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one for XL. I mean, XL beat a decent Cottage Hill team and lost to 7A BC Rain, but it was a closer game than the score would indicate. There they were. I believe XL was even winning the game at halftime, or it might have been tied, but. They got a tough road to hoe against Flomaton. Flomaton led by Jax Fillmore, their great back, and Flomaton is not just got a good offense; they've got a good defense, and we know they're well coached by Coach Vickery. So it'll be a tough one for XL, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. But I look for Flomaton to come away with the W.
Yeah, in 3A Region 1, Flomaton is undefeated so far. They're 2-0. They've beat Hillcrest Evergreen 21-13. They beat Cottage Hill Christian 34-14. XL is their next up to play. The only loss for the Hurricanes this year has been when they entertained Walton, Florida, out of Defuniak Springs, and they lost that game by a score of 45-21. But Walton, Florida, is a really good football team from the Panhandle down there.
Right. Walton's typically got good football teams, and they're I believe they're 3A, maybe even 4A. Florida doesn't have a site like Alabama's that you can just. So, but I know they're a bigger school than Flomaton, and that's their only loss. And it was a fairly competitive game for the most part.
Yeah, well, one of the things that you do, when you coach these kids, when you coach these teams and all, one of the things that you want to do is the way you get your team better is you play, you play people that are better than you are. And so in order to get your bunch better, sometime, especially when it's a non-region game, you take on a team that's outside your state, outside your region, even outside your classification, in hopes that you don't, number one, that you don't get anybody hurt, but by playing that better level of competition, it makes your team better in the long run.
Yeah, and if you do, and they do have good coaches, you can be sure that Flomaton's coaches have done a lot of film study on it, and then they take what they learned in that film from that game, which was a competitive game, and then they try to fix those things and during practice the next week when they get ready for the next game. So, no harm in. I mean, there's no such thing really as a good loss, but I mean they played them competitively and got a good idea of what they need to work on.
Staying in Monroe County now as we move down Highway 21, going southbound here in the what we refer to as L.A., Lower Alabama. We're headed down toward the community of Uri, where I reside down here. And, of course, we've got the J.U. Blacksher Bulldogs. J.U. Blacksher started the year 3-0, but they had to head over to Chickasaw last week, right outside of Mobile. Chickasaw, a little community over there. Chickasaw High School, a 2A Area 1 school that was a region game, 3A Region 1 is that area that classification. But anyway, Chickasaw, J.U. Blacksher got beat by Chickasaw in a very good ball game. The final score there was 28-26. So Blacksher gets beat for the first time. They're 3-1. They're 1-1 in the region. Now they've got a toughie. They got another tough one coming up as J.U. Blacksher has to get back on the bus. They go back on the road this week and head over to Mobile. They've got to play the St. Luke's Wildcats, and that game is going to be at St. Luke's. So far on the season, St. Luke's is 4-0. St. Luke's has beat Fruitdale, Marengo. They beat Chickasaw earlier in the year. That game also by 2 points, 36-34, and they beat Washington County, which was also a region game, 27-14. Now, that Chickasaw game between them, both teams, Chickasaw beat Blacksher by 2. St. Luke's beat Chickasaw by 2, so these teams are going to be very close together talent-wise and skill-wise, and it's going to probably come down to who has the ball last in this ball game as to who picks up this win.
Yeah, that's right. I think Chickasaw, we knew they had a good team. I think they were undefeated, but they really hadn't played anybody that weren't your typically best teams, but they've got a good team. When they beat Washington County up there in Chatham, that's a pretty decent football team, and that's what we were kind of looking for. And it was a good game, but I mean they did beat them, so I'd say just as what you just alluded to. I think that this game could go either way. It should be a very good football game out in West Mobile.
All right, so let's continue moving southbound. We're now going to head out of Monroe County. We're going to get into Escambia County, Alabama, and we'll go to Canoe first as we take a look at this week's opponent for the Escambia Academy Cougars. Of course, the Cougars they're struggling a little bit. Only one win on the year so far for the Cougars, and just looking at what they have faced, and they're halfway through their season schedule basically already. They're 1-4 on the year. Now they play another Mississippi team this week. It's not going to be a game that really means anything to Escambia Academy. It's just a chance for them to kind of get a win and hopefully be able to reset for the remaining games of the season. But they're going to be hosting in Canoe a team. It's called St. Stanislaus, Mississippi. Don't know anything about them. But the Cougars will be playing at home this week against that Mississippi private school. So hopefully the Cougars will be able to get things going in the right direction and pick up a win.
That's right. The Cougars have a very good offense. They've had some defensive struggles this year, but every game's been competitive. They've got a chance to put another W up this weekend. And we sure wish them well. Of course, they're the good friends of ours, and we're always rooting for them.
Well, yeah, I mean, looking at games that they've had so far, you're absolutely right. The Cougars score some points, but the problem is that the other team just scores more, and so they've got to strap it on defensively and try to get some stops. And then with the number of points that the Cougars have been scoring, I mean, they've scored 20 points, 23 points, 28 points, 38 points. In the game that they scored 38 points, you scored almost 40 points and lost the game by 22. So, right. you got to play a little defense to go along with your offense.
That's right. And it seems like a lot of times the games are really close at halftime. So, if I were the Cougars coaches, their defense coach, I would almost, whatever I've been doing at halftime, I'd just do something completely different because of that. I don't know what's going on at halftime, but a lot of the games are close at the half, and then in the second half, they just tend to keep, kind of lose control and things get out of hand. But they're a competitive football team, and I don't know anything about this school either, other than what you just called out their name. But hopefully the Cougars come away with a W this weekend.
Moving over to Atmore, the Escambia County High School Blue Devils were 3-0 going into last week. They were at home against St. Michael Catholic. And St. Michael coached by former NFL quarterback Phillip Rivers. And St. Michael picked up a win right there over the Blue Devils by a score of 41-26, a game that was really close all during the ball game. Now, the Blue Devils will go on the road this week. They go to Camden, Alabama, which is an absolutely beautiful place. If you've never been to Camden, then that ought to be on a bucket list trip. I've done some officiating and some radio over at Camden. Camden's a great place to go, and those people are so nice over there. But they will be at Wilcox Central this week and Wilcox Central is a game that really the Blue Devils should pick up another win. They should come home with a 4-1 record when they come back. Yeah,
and I hope that the good folks of Atmore get up and travel up there it's going to be this is like a fall weekend for us anyhow. It wouldn't be considered that way up north, but it's been kind of cool in the mornings. Humidity's down. It'll be a beautiful weekend. And Wilcox County, which is where Wilcox Central's at, in Camden, it's real hilly and pretty with a lot of hardwoods and pines mixed in. It's just a nice place to travel to, like you said. And of course, you don't live too far from there yourself. And,
that's right.
It's a neat place to go. So I hope Atmore gets out and travels up there and support the team. And one thing I'll say about Wilcox, they can score. So you don't want to just take anything for granted. So we need everybody to get out and travel up there and support the Blue Devils this Friday night.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this game earlier, but we'll go ahead and mention it again. Of course, the Flomaton Hurricanes, they're 3-1 on the year. They travel to Monroe County. They will be at Excel to take on the Panthers this week. You know, Flomaton's a good football team. We've already talked about, you know, the coach Doug Vickery Jr. He's a very good football coach. Flomaton just a couple of years away from a state championship that they won here in the state of Alabama, so that's going to be a good one. It is a region game. The thing that's I really, if I was going to pick a winner of this one, I would have to go with Flomaton just because I believe that, you know, they had a really good team at Excel last year. They went 9-2 on the year, but right at the end of the season, something happened. I'm not sure really what, but they lost their final. They were 9-0 and then lost their final 2 games of the year. They lost at Chipley, the last game of the year, Chipley, Florida, who is really a good football team down in Florida. But then they lost their first round playoff game, which was kind of really a surprise. But the thing is that they lost so many seniors on that XL team that this would be considered kind of a rebuilding year for the XL Panthers.
That's right. A lot of times in the 1A, 2A, and 3A schools, now there are some schools that do, and I kind of got the feeling WS Neal is going to be that way with Coach Fountain and his staff there, Coach Sims and the rest of them, of establishing just a year after year winning tradition. T.R. Miller's been 3A at times, and they've had it, and but a lot of times those schools are good every 3 or 4 years, you know. And then when I don't care who you are, if you in a high school, if you lose 17 seniors off of, you know, like a roster of 40 or 50 people, you know that's a big loss. So they're struggling a little bit this year, and I expect Flomaton to come away with the W.
Yeah, I tell you one thing, though, something that there will be no shortage of at XL Friday night will be fans that are just absolutely rabid over their XL Panthers. I mean, they love their Panthers in XL.
They do.
And they will certainly, be looking to pick up a victory. There will be no shortage of folks in the stands cheering on those Panthers. Of course, you know, in the Panthers, if you think about it, you know, in the whole history scheme of things or everything, the Panthers are they're the home of Alabama football great and Dallas Cowboy football great Leroy Jordan. You know, and so
right.
I can remember, you know, years ago, back when we played Pee Wee football in Atmore, Alabama, because we had our buddies, Todd Powell and Mike Stacy, who were cousins, and they were cousins with a lot of people up here in Monroe County. They were actually cousins to Leroy Jordan. Leroy Jordan came out and watched one of our Pee Wee football games one time years ago, and when I say years ago, I'm talking 45, 50-ish, 50 sort of years ago, a long time ago. But that was just kind of neat that that we have that memory.
I don't know if you know this, but you know, actually, I'm kin to Leroy. Leroy's grandmother and my great grandmother are the same person, and so Leroy was first cousin to my mom and all my uncles and stuff. And his grandmother was a Hicks. And of course, my grandmother was also a Hicks. So, but anyhow, a lot of tradition up there at XL. And I hope Flomaton gets out and follows up there. And I know
they will.
It's just a short drive. But for those that can't travel, of course, you know, you mentioned that before. XL will be on YouTube. And they've got an excellent way of the way they put it on there. It's just like watching a live broadcast.
Oh yeah, they do a great job. Those guys do a great job.
Yeah, for those that can't travel, you can still be able to watch the game.
So as we continue in Escambia County, Alabama, let's look at the Bruton City Schools, T.R. Miller Tigers. T.R. Miller, they They got beat by UMS Wright the second game of the season. They won a close one in overtime the very first game of the season. Hillcrest Evergreen, that game was 26-20. They lost to UMS Wright, which they only lost by 2, and getting beat by UMS Wright and Terry Curtis and his bunch over there is no need to hang your head for that. They got all over Wilcox Central up in Camden by a score of 47-12, and then they played a very good Jackson Aggie football team last week as Jackson came to town, hung 38 points on T.R. Miller, beat them 38-7. So a chance for the Tigers to rebound this week at home as they will take on Orange Beach. And that game will be at Bruton Municipal Stadium there on campus at T.R. Miller. If we take a gander at Orange Beach, the Orange Beach Makos, they're struggling on the year. Orange Beach is 0-3. So a chance for T.R. Miller to right the ship. And this will be a region game, a 4A Region 1 game for the T.R. Miller Tigers.
Yeah, and, T.R. Miller, like you said, they're 2-2, but they have played a murderer's row schedule so far. So maybe this, they'll be able to catch your breath a little bit and play some younger players in this. And I mean, every game they've had has been a close game, except for last week. And really, they didn't do too badly against Jackson in the first half, from what I understand. We were calling the WS Neal game on the radio and with SportzMoose Media, but we didn't. We didn't get to see any of it. So, but I mean, I think that they've got a very, as they usually do. T.R. Miller's got a really good football team, and I'm sure they're going to be able to put a W up this weekend.
Well, as we move across the creek there from Bruton to East Bruton, let's talk about our game this week that we will have on the radio only on WBZR 105.9 FM in Atmore. And we won't be on YouTube this week, won't have video because there's just not room. My understanding is there's just not room in the press box up there, but we will have the radio broadcast. The game will go on the air at 6:30. It'll kick off at 7 or thereabouts, and it'll be the WS Neal Blue Eagles and the Hillcrest Evergreen Jaguars. The Neal Blue Eagles are 3-1 on the year. They're 1-1 in the region. And they lost to Mobile Christian 38-6. They beat Monroe County last week by a score of 48-12. They've got Hillcrest Evergreen, and Hillcrest early in the year, Hillcrest has been predicted to be one of the better teams in Class 3A Region 1, but they've struggled just a little bit early as they are 0-4. They lost to T.R. Miller first game of the year, 26-20 in overtime, and it just seems like that something about that close loss to T.R. Miller just kind of did something to them. They played a very good Davidson team at Mobile, lost to them 59-46. Then they lost to Flomaton. That was their first region game of the season. They lost to Flomaton 21-13, and they lost last week to Thomasville by a score of 33-13. They've got Neal this week, and hopefully, because we do Neal on the radio and we have a lot of friends there at WS Neal, hopefully the Neal Blue Eagles will be able to pick up a victory in this ball game. But this is going to be a dogfight there on the hill in Evergreen as the Jaguars and the Blue Eagles battle it out in 3A Region 1.
Yeah, the WS Neal, they got a good team. We know they do, led by Carter Hodges and Jalen Likely, and the whole team's a good team. But this is one of those watch out games that you better have it strapped on, because Evergreen 0-4, but I mean all 4 losses were close. All 4 of them were close, and they were all two good football teams. So WS Neal's got to be focused and prepare well during practice this week, and we'll be there to bring it to you, like you said, on WBZR on the radio. Won't be on YouTube.
All right, Rick, well, let's kind of shift gears now and move into other things. That's everything that we've got high school-wise this week. And like I say, I wanted to take an opportunity to just very quickly just share some information with everybody that tunes into this podcast. This podcast is going to change gears just a little bit in the future. And what we want to say is that, when we originally started this thing, we were covering local sports right here around us, within our little footprint that we've got, talking about from Mobile, Baldwin, Escambia, Monroe County, Washington County, this kind of southwest Alabama area. Well, at that time that we started our podcast, that was the audience we were actually geared to reach. Because we were doing things primarily on Facebook. We were putting the podcast out there on Facebook pages. We had people that were sharing it, and it was getting distributed that way. And it's like I've told you, and I've told other people before. We were lucky to kind of be able, amongst everybody's friends that were avid sports listeners, and that really paid attention to what we were doing. We reached out to about 500 or so people. And one thing that has happened here recently, I got an email yesterday that I shared on Facebook, and I got bombarded by another group of emails today because we've kind of put things together. We've got the equipment to do it with, and we found out that we've moved from about a 500 person footprint on Facebook to we're now taking this thing basically global, and it's such an incredible opportunity for me personally and for you. I mean, this is what we love to do, and we're not doing it for the money. We're doing it for the enjoyment of what we're doing, and that's the important thing. But what we've been able to do is, and I'm just going to read. I've got a list here as I made some attempts and finally got emails in place and got stuff going. This podcast is now going out and is available on Spotify. It is available on Spotify. It is available on iHeart Radio. It is available on Apple Podcasts. It's available on Google Podcasts. It's available on the Podbean app. It's available on Amazon Music and Audible. It's going to be available on TuneIn and Alexa. There's the potential audience base that we've grown to. As I told somebody, that it's it blew up exponentially, to use a big word, but I mean, we went from reaching 500 of our closest friends that enjoy sports to the possibility of basically reaching 500 million people, because Spotify has a subscription list of about 500 million people. And so we're going to try to do things a little differently, because we want to be able to provide the best product that we can for all our potential listeners. Now, are we still going to do something for our local people? Yeah, probably so. But one thing that we're going to try to do, Rick, is that I'm excited about, is we're going to try to step it up a bit and start talking about some college football on the weekend, because we're all, we've been college football fans for years and years. And so as part of that tonight, with this thing kind of blowing up and going out everywhere, we kind of want to run down some college games that we think are really going to be some good games this weekend, and just talk about them just a little bit. And the first one, Rick, that I'm looking at, and I know you're looking at the same information that I've got, is there's going to be a big-time game in the Atlantic Coast Conference. The 11 o'clock ABC game going on this Saturday is going to be number 4 Florida State taking on Clemson at Clemson. That's going to be a war.
It is. I think Florida State, and justifiably so, wind up beating LSU in that first game, and which in what was a big upset, and they're undefeated and ranked 4th in the country. And I think Clemson, everybody kind of gave them a little bit of too much grief, possibly, for their first loss, which was to what's turned out to be a very good Duke team, but then they clobbered the next two. So we'll find out, I think, a lot about Florida State this. And I remember watching that Florida State LSU game, and there was a bunch of coaching blunders on LSU's part. Of course, my whole family lives down there around my brother Guy and a lot of my cousins. They still, our good friend Todd White lives down there, and Craig in that area, that Tallahassee area. So a lot of Florida State fans down there. Todd's not a Florida State fan, but there's a lot of them down there, and they've got big hopes, so far this year for Florida State. But I think we're going to find out with them having to travel into Death Valley. We're going to find out a little bit about how good, if they're really worthy of that 4 ranking that they've got, because I've got the feeling Dabo Swinney and Clemson's got something. And you know what? Traveling on those early games, those 11 o'clock in the morning games, if you're the visitors, those are tough games. And so they've got to go into Clemson there in northern South Carolina and play them and it should be, and it'll be on ABC. It's on ABC games, so everybody will be able to watch it nationally televised.
Yeah, another big game. Just to kind of revisit this one just a little bit, one problem I think Clemson's got right now early in the year, and they're still looking for somebody that they can tap and basically give the keys to the kingdom to. Clemson's struggling to find a quarterback. We know another team that we'll talk about in a little bit that's really struggled a couple of games trying to find a quarterback. So another big game that's happening here with a team from the state of Alabama, the Auburn Tigers. The Auburn Tigers are undefeated on the year so far. They travel to Texas A&M, so they'll be going over and taking on Jimbo and his bunch over there at Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher, and of course, Texas A&M has struggled a little bit early. They lost to Miami, their first game of the year, in a game that was nationally televised. But the Auburn Tigers are really clicking pretty good right now, and Coach Hugh Freeze seems to have things going very well at Auburn. So Auburn fans, hey, your guys kick off on ESPN at 11 o'clock. So I'm sure that there will be plenty of War Eagles just screaming. These people will be screaming War Eagle and getting started very early on Saturday morning as the Tigers head out to play Texas A&M.
Yeah, a lot of our friends are traveling over, to the game, and that's quite the experience to go to College Station and play over there. And just like we said about, Auburn's undefeated, but this is the first really, and it's their SEC opener, and it's going to be loud at Kyle Field in College Station. So a tough one for sure to go over there, but we'll be rooting for them. So good luck to the Tigers.
Yeah, one of the coolest things that I think would be a part of going into to Kyle Field over there and watching Texas A&M play, that would be better than the football, to watch the Texas A&M band perform at halftime. That military band, that precision that they put on the field at halftime would just be awesome. That would be worth the price of admission to go over and watch, just to be able to see that band perform.
That's right. A lot of good games. Those are the 2 best early games that we could find.
Another game, of course, that's big for us. We're still, like I said earlier, talking about quarterbacks, finding a quarterback. University of Alabama taking on Ole Miss in Tuscaloosa. That game is the CBS game at 2:30. Alabama, it is what it is. I'm not sure what the answer is. Coach Nick Saban and his coaching staff, they're working to find it. I really thought of the quarterbacks that we saw, that we've seen so far, that Jalen Milroe is probably the best of the group. He seems to be able to move the offense, but I think the offense with Alabama, with him in the game, is going to have to be different. They're going to have to use his ability to scramble and move the ball down the field with his legs, and then, there's no doubt the kid can throw the ball in the air 60 yards and can hit a dime. But what he's got to be able to do, he's got to learn to do, is be able to throw those short and those intermediate passes, especially using play action, because so far Alabama's offensive line play has struggled just a little bit, and if you're going to pass, the quarterback's got to have time to sit back there and read the defense and find an open receiver.
That's right. It's that whole the thing about Alabama this year, I think, is the defense looks solid. And that's what we needed to beat South Florida last weekend. Milroe, he just doesn't seem sometimes to see the coverage like it really is. He in his interceptions he's thrown this year and last, it's like he misses the second guy in coverage and chunks the ball when he thinks that receiver has beat his primary defender. And so I think they're going to go probably with a little bit more of a something. Number one, it's like you just said, he doesn't have time to pass. I mean, both tackles are struggling. Latham at right tackle, and then the blind side tackle Caden Proctor with left side. They've shown so far, teams have shown so far the ability to just, bring up a back on like safety blitzes and things like that, defensive back, and just use speed to get around them. So our quarterbacks just haven't had time to throw the ball. So I bet against Ole Miss, number one, Alabama is because of Kiffin's propensity to want to throw the ball and be able to score quick with his no-huddle offenses. I think Alabama's going to want to go with a run-first mentality to try and control the clock, and that will include Jalen Milroe, the quarterback, as part of that running strategy. And that's what I expect to see. And I agree. I think of the three quarterbacks we've seen, like it, love it, don't like it, hate it, whatever, it doesn't matter. Milroe appears to be the best quarterback of the three. So that's who, and he's already said that's who's going to get the start. And of course that will be on good old CBS. So we'll have to listen to Gary Danielson.
Well, and I
don't know if we mentioned this, but Auburn is the ESPN early game.
Yeah,
it'll be
that's at 11:00. And they will be there, but and the whole thing with Alabama, we understand that Alabama struggled, and we're both Alabama fans, and I'm also, look, you Auburn guys, don't fret because I'm an Alabama fan. I pull for Auburn too. The only time I really don't pull for Auburn is that last game of the year when we all are, when there's houses, split up, there's marriages that are on the rocks for at least about a 3.5 hour ball game. So, I mean, I'm going to be pulling for Auburn just as hard against Texas A&M as I will Alabama against Ole Miss in that afternoon. And Rick, I mean, that's going to about do things for us so far, in this week as what I wanted to be able to share is the fact that, we have the ability, we both love the game of football. We've been around it all our lives. We're both experienced at sitting around because the only thing that we're doing different now is we're talking about games that we would talk about anyway. We're talking about them into an open microphone, and it's cool to be able to do that. It's cool to have the audience to be able to express ourselves and talk about things, and something that you're going to find as we expand this podcast into larger areas and try to get into more some college football action, some SEC ball, and everything like that. We're not here to talk about your team. We're not going to run your team down. We're not going to run down any of the members of the SEC down. We're just going to present the facts as we have them, and we're just football fans. That's all we are. We're football fans, and we love the games, and it doesn't matter who's playing. Good football is good football, and I enjoy it. And so we're gonna talk about it in that fashion. We want this to be a podcast that you would want to turn on. I don't want to get into a situation where I'm second guessing coaches, because I'm not a coach. Nick Saban makes a gazillion $1 million a year to coach Alabama football. Whatever he does, it's on him. It's fine with me. I just enjoy watching him. I enjoy watching him. I enjoy watching Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers. All these coaches, they get paid to do what they do, and we're just going to talk about it because we're fans of the game, and that's the important thing. And so Rick, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you being with me tonight, as you always are. And like I say, moving forward, we're going to expand this thing, and we're going to do more with it, because there's what we need everybody that hears this podcast to do is on one of these areas, wherever you find it, on whether it's iHeart Radio, whether it's Apple Podcasts, whether it's Google, whether it's Podbean, whether it's Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you find it, like it. And if you get a chance to drop in a comment, drop those in there, because that's what makes this thing grow, is if you enjoy it, other people may enjoy it too. The way they figure out that they're going to enjoy it is by your response, and your enjoyment of it will draw them in. And we're wanting to draw more listeners to the podcast so that they will enjoy what we're doing, and we certainly want everybody to be a part of it and enjoy it.
And you can find it on Podbean. That's where it originates.
That is right. Podbean is where it all originates from. So anyway, well, thanks, Rick. That's going to do it for us tonight, man. And we will we'll talk about more football next week as we continue. You've been listening to the SportzMoose Media Podcast, brought to you every week right here. And thank you so much for tuning in, and hopefully we'll catch you next week.